The empty coordinate was supposed to be empty, and then it was not. Cartographer Sen Vale had spent 41 cycles of his life teaching young charters one simple law, and the law was this: the galaxy is a thing that is owned. Every star is a number. Every void between stars is a number. Every gap, every dust lane, every cold pocket where no light had ever fallen, all of it belonged to the folded Dominion, because the Dominion had measured it first. To measure a place was to own it. To own a place was to fold it. And to fold a place was to be able to reach across the whole sweep of the sky, in the time it took a lesser race to cross a single room. Sen believed this the way he believed in his own hands. He was an old creature now, his outer plating gone gray at the seams, his sight organs clouded at the edges, and he sat at the high desk of the vault of settled stars and watched the great chart turn. The chart was the largest object the Dominion had ever made. It was a sphere of light 11,000 spans wide, and inside it floated every number the Empire had ever claimed. 400 million stars, 900 billion folds. Every one of them green, which meant measured, which meant owned, which meant safe. There was one coordinate that was not green. It sat in a margin of the chart that no charter had bothered to read in 900 years. The Dominion called it the Hollow Quarter, and the name was a joke, because the Hollow Quarter held nothing. No worlds worth folding, no metals worth lifting, only one dead yellow star and a ring of cold rock around it, swept clean and marked closed and colored a soft, sleeping gray. Gray meant nothing here. Gray meant we looked, and there was nothing, and we will not look again. Sen looked again, because a junior charter named Resadun had come to his desk with her hands shaking. The gray coordinate woke up, she said. He almost sent her away. In 41 cycles, he had heard 1,000 juniors say 1,000 foolish things, and the gray never woke up, because the gray was nothing, and nothing does not wake. But she put her reading stone on his desk, and the stone showed the coordinate, and the coordinate was no longer gray. It was black. Not black like empty, black like a thing the chart could not read. The vault had 10,000 instruments, and every one of them was built to measure, and not one of them could put a number on the black. The mass of the thing read as 0, then as a number so large the chart refused to print it, then as 0 again. The fold density read as flat, which was impossible, because flat space was a thing the Dominion had abolished 400 years ago. There was no flat space left in the owned galaxy. The Empire had folded all of it, and yet here, in the margin no one read, a small patch of the sky had gone flat and black and unmeasured, as if someone had reached into the chart and torn out a single number with their bare hand. "Fold a watcher to it," Sen said. His voice was very quiet. "A small one. Now." The Dominion folded a watcher. This was the thing the Empire was proud of above all others. It did not send a ship across the distance. It folded the distance until the watcher was already there. The watcher was a seeing drone the size of a charter's fist, and it crossed 9,000 light-years in the space of one breath, and it arrived at the black coordinate, and it sent back one image, and then it sent back nothing, ever again. The image hung in the air above Sen's desk for the rest of his life. He would see it when he closed his sight organs. He would see it in the dark. It was a ship. It was a ship the way a mountain is a stone. The black coordinate was not empty, and had never been empty. Something was sitting in it, holding still, and it was the size of a small moon, and it was shaped like nothing the Dominion built. The Dominion built spheres and rings, because a sphere folds clean, and a ring folds cleaner. This thing was long. It was a blade laid flat against the dark, gray on gray, scarred down its whole length with marks that Sen's instruments swore were weld seams, which meant the thing had been built, by hands, by a people, in the slow, cruel way of a race that could not fold, and so had to carry every piece of itself across the real and terrible distance of space. And along its flank, in letters 200 spans tall, in a script the vault's translation engine took 4 full minutes to crack, was written a name. The name was Patient Mercy. Resadun read it aloud, and she did not understand it, and Sen did not understand it either, and that was the first moment the old cartographer felt the thing he would spend the rest of the war learning to name. It was not fear, yet. Fear came later. This was smaller and worse. It was the feeling of a creature who has spent his whole life certain that the chart was complete, looking at a place where the chart was wrong. The black coordinate had a number now. The vault assigned it automatically, the way it assigned every new thing. The number was 7777 hollow, and the engine that assigned it added a single tag, and the tag was the tag the Dominion used for objects it intended to fold and remove. The tag said pending erasure. Sen looked at the tag for a long time. Then he reached out with one gray hand, and he turned it off, and Resadun made a small sound, because no charter had ever turned off an erasure tag in the history of the vault. Not yet, Sen said. We do not erase what we have not measured. That is the first law. Before the Empire, before the fold, before any of it, that was the law. We measure first. He looked at the ship that should not exist, sitting in the margin no one read, in the place the chart called nothing. Bring me everything we have ever recorded from the Hollow Quarter. 900 years of it. I want to know what we missed. It took the juniors 6 hours to find it, because no one had filed it properly, because no one had thought it mattered. And when they laid it on his desk, Sen understood that the Empire had made a mistake 900 years ago. A small clerical mistake, a single gray coordinate marked closed when it should have been marked watched, and that the mistake had been sitting in the margin all this time, patient, waiting, with weld seams down its flank and a name no one could read, and that the price of that mistake was about to come due, all at once, with interest, in a currency the folded Dominion did not yet know it owed. The records from the Hollow Quarter were thin, and what little they held made Sen's outer plating go cold. 900 years ago, a Dominion survey fold had passed through the dead yellow star and recorded one line. The line said, "Primitive metal burners detected, subfold, no threat, marked for later." Later had never come. The Empire had 1 billion worlds to fold, and a margin full of nothing, and a race that could not even bend space was not worth the cost of a second look. So the charter who wrote that line had colored the coordinate gray and moved on, and the line had sat in a drawer for 9 centuries, and the metal burners had been left alone. Sen understood, looking at the dead yellow star, exactly what the Empire had done. It had found a young thing. It had decided the young thing was beneath measuring, and then it had turned its back and walked away and forgotten. For 900 years, that young things grow. Find me the survey fold's full scan, he told Ressa. Not the summary, the raw. The raw scan took another hour to dredge up, and when it came, it showed Sen the third planet of the dead yellow star, as it had been 900 years ago. A blue world, wet. Loud with radio noise, the crude leaking kind, a world that shouted its every secret into the dark because it did not yet know the dark was listening. The survey had counted the metal burners' ships and found them laughable. 41 vessels in the whole system, chemical drives, no fold, no reach. A people nailed to a single star by the cruel, slow physics of real distance, throwing rocks at the sky and calling it a fleet. The charter who wrote that summary had laughed. Sen could feel the laugh in the old file, in the lazy way the numbers were rounded, in the casual gray of the closed tag. 41 ships. Beneath measuring. Sen was not laughing. Because the thing sitting at coordinate 7777 hollow was one ship, and it was the size of a small moon, and the Empire had just folded a watcher to look at it, and the watcher had died. Pull the watcher's final telemetry, he said. The half-second before it stopped. They pulled it. The half-second was a horror, told in numbers. The watcher had folded in clean. It had begun its scan, and in the 11th part of a second after it began, the watcher's own fold engine had reported something the engine had no language for. It reported that the space around the human ship was not foldable, not shielded, not jammed, unfoldable, the way a stone is undrinkable, the way a sound is uneatable. The category itself did not apply. The watcher had tried to fold away to safety, and it could not, because there was no fold left to use. Something had reached into 9,000 light-years of measured, owned, folded space, and made it flat again, in a sphere around the human ship, and the watcher had been a creature of the fold with no flat space drive at all, and so it had simply hung there, suddenly mortal, suddenly slow, in a pocket of old dead physics it had no way to cross. Then the human ship had moved one weapon a fraction of a span, and the watcher had ended. Sen read it 3 times. The folded Dominion's entire civilization, its whole reach, its ownership of 400 million stars, rested on one ability, the ability to fold distance away. And the metal burners, the laughable 41-ship people from the gray margin, had found a way to take the fold off the table, to drag a fight back down into the flat, slow, real space, where you had to actually be where you were, where distance was distance again, where the only way to reach a thing was to physically cross the gulf between you and it. The Dominion had not fought in flat space in 400 years. It had forgotten how. It had no flat space drives, no flat space tactics, no flat space guns. It had folded all of that away as obsolete the way a grown creature throws out the crutches it used as a child. The Empire had become magnificent and fast and utterly, perfectly helpless at the one kind of war the human ship was built to fight. Asen sat back, 41 cycles of teaching young charters that the galaxy is a thing that is owned, and here at the end of it, he understood the law had a flaw. You can only own what you can fold. And there was now a place in the galaxy you could not fold, and it was growing, and it had a name, and the name was Patient Mercy. He should have sent a war host, he knew it. The correct thing, the Empire thing, was to fold 10,000 ships to 77777 hollow, and erase the anomaly before the rest of the chart could see it had blinked. But Sen was old, and he had broken the law once already today by turning off the erasure tag, and the breaking had felt less like failure than like the first honest thing he had done in years. So instead of a war host, he folded a voice. He opened a channel to the human ship. It should not have worked. You cannot fold a signal into flat space any more than you can fold a watcher into it. But the human ship answered, which meant the human ship was letting it answer, which meant the human ship had wanted, all along, for someone in the vault of settled stars to be able to speak to it. The thought sat in Sen's gut like a swallowed stone. The voice that came back was old, not old like the Empire's archive voices, smoothed and folded and sexless, old like the survey file's dead yellow star, old like real years lived in real time. It was a human voice, and it spoke the Dominion's high tongue, slowly, with the care of a creature who had learned a language from listening across 900 years of leaked radio and folded broadcast. "This is the warship Patient Mercy," the voice said. "I am her master. My name is Holt Aldous. You are the first one of your empire to speak to us instead of shooting at us. I am told that is rare among your people. I am glad it is you." Sen's translation engine rendered every word, and Sen understood every word, and he still felt as if he were hearing a language from before the world was made. "You are the cartographer," Holt Aldous said. "You keep the chart. You turned off the tag that said you meant to erase us. I watched you do it. I want you to understand that I noticed, and that it mattered, and that because of it, I am going to tell you the truth, before I have to show it to you. Your empire does not extend many of us that courtesy. Sit down, cartographer. Let me tell you what your people did 900 years ago, and what it bought them." Sen sat down. He did not remember deciding to. 900 years ago, Holt Aldous said, your survey passed over our star and counted 41 ships and decided we were beneath your notice. You marked us gray, closed, not worth measuring, and then your empire did the thing it always does. It turned its back. A pause, and in the pause Sen heard, faintly, the sound of a very large ship breathing through its hull, the creak and settle of metal that had been carried, not folded, across an unimaginable gulf. We watched you go. We were small then. We could not have stopped a single one of your ships. So we did the only thing a small thing can do when a large thing decides it is nothing. We agreed with you. We stayed small. We stayed gray. We stayed beneath your notice. For 900 years, cartographer, we have worked very hard at being nothing, because being nothing is the safest thing to be in a galaxy that erases what it measures. What did you do? Sen asked. His own voice sounded thin in his ears. We learned what you are, Holt Aldous said. We listened. Every leaked fold, every survey echo, every careless broadcast that bled out of your own space into our gray margin. We caught it, and we kept it, and we studied it. We learned that your whole empire is one trick, a beautiful trick, the most beautiful trick I have ever seen a people perform. You learned to fold distance away, and so you stopped paying for distance. You stopped crossing space. You forgot that space is a thing that has to be crossed. The breathing ship creaked again. We never had your trick. We could never afford it. So while your empire spent 900 years getting faster at not crossing distance, we spent 900 years getting better at crossing it, at living in it, at fighting in it. We built ships that carry their whole war inside their own hull, because there is no folding to a supply line and back, because every weapon we fire, we had to bring with us across the real dark. We became the thing your empire threw away. We became a people of distance. Sen looked at the great chart turning above him. 400 million stars, all of it green, all of it owned, all of it folded, and for the first time in 41 cycles he saw it the way the human must see it. A civilization that had never once had to be where it was. A civilization that had paid for its reach by forgetting how to walk. And then, Holt Aldous said, very gently, about 100 years ago, we solved the last piece. We learned how to make a place stop folding, how to reach out and flatten the space around us so that nothing in it can fold, in or out, including ourselves, because we do not need to fold. We never did. We have always been able to simply go. Do you understand what that means, cartographer? It means we can take any fight we choose and drag it down out of your beautiful folded sky and into the flat dark where distance is real again. And in the flat dark, your empire of 400 million stars has no ships, no guns, no drives, no way to even reach the battle, because the only way you know how to reach anything is to fold, and we have taken the fold off the table. A pause. You have one ship that can fight in flat space, and you are looking at it, and it is mine. Sen Vale, cartographer of the Vault of Settled Stars, keeper of the green chart, sat very still in the largest map ever made, and felt the whole bright-owned galaxy tilt under him like a thing that had only ever been balanced on the lie that it was complete. Why tell me? He managed. Why not simply do it? Because I am not here to erase you, said the master of the patient mercy. Your empire erases. I do not. I am here to make your people learn one thing, and learn it deeply enough that they never forget it again. And the thing is this. You do not get to decide a people are nothing. You do not get to mark a thing gray and walk away and assume it stayed small while you weren't looking. The old voice hardened, just slightly, the way old metal hardens at the edge where it has been struck many times. Your empire is about to send a war host to this coordinate, cartographer. I have already counted them. They are folding now. 11,000 ships. And I want you, the one who turned off the tag, to watch what happens when 11,000 folded ships arrive at the one place in the galaxy where folding does not work. And 9,000 light-years away, in the margin of the chart that no one read, the vault's instruments lit up all at once, as 11,000 green points began to gather around a single black one, and Sen Vale understood that the war host had been folding the entire time he had been listening, that no one had waited for his measurement, that the Empire had marked the human ship pending erasure the moment it saw it, and had simply ignored him, the old fool who turned off tags, and that he was about to watch his whole civilization learn, in flat dead space, the cost of 900 years of turning its back. They will not listen to me, Sen said. I am only the cartographer. I keep the chart. I do not command the host. I know, said Holt Aldous. That is why I am not asking you to stop them. I am asking you to watch them. And then I am asking you to do the one thing your empire has never once done in its whole long history. I am asking you to write down what really happened, exactly as it happened, in the chart, where it cannot be folded away. The ship breathed. Can you do that, old one? When it is over, can you tell the truth? Sen looked at the 11,000 green points closing on the single black one, and he thought of the gray coordinate that should have been watched, and the survey charter who laughed, and the 900 years of nothing that had not been nothing at all. Yes, he said, I can tell the truth. Good, said the master of the patient mercy. Then watch closely. It begins in 90 seconds. And, cartographer, when it is done, count them for me. I want your empire to know the exact number. Not rounded, not gray. Measured. To the one. Before the war host arrived, in the 90 seconds the human master had given him, Sen Vale did a thing no cartographer had done in 400 years. He stopped trusting the chart. He had spent his whole life inside the green sphere, And the green sphere had told him the galaxy, and he had believed it, the way a creature believes the floor under its feet. But the human ship had just told him the floor was painted over a hole, and the paint was the color gray. And so, in the 90 seconds, Sen did the one thing the painting could not survive. He pulled the chart apart and looked at how it had been made. The vault of settled stars did not measure the galaxy continuously. No one had ever told the junior charters this, because it would have frightened them, and a frightened charter rounds badly. The chart was a thing of samples. The Empire folded a watcher to a coordinate, took a reading, and if the reading showed nothing worth folding, it colored the coordinate gray and never returned. Once gray, a coordinate was never resampled. Why would it be? The Dominion had 400 million stars to maintain and could not afford to keep remeasuring nothing. So gray was permanent. Gray was a decision made once, long ago, by a single tired charter, and then trusted forever by everyone who came after. Sen ran the count. He had never run it before. No one had. He asked the vault a question the vault had never been asked, and the question was simply this: how much of the chart is gray? The answer took the engine a full minute to assemble, because the engine had to read every coordinate the Empire had ever closed, and there were a great many of them. When the number came, Sen sat very still and looked at it, and felt the bottom drop out of his certainty. 41 parts in 100. Nearly half the galaxy by volume was gray. Nearly half of everything the folded Dominion called its own had been glanced at once, found unprofitable, colored gray, and never looked at again. The Empire did not own 41 parts in 100 of the sky. The Empire had merely decided it was not worth owning, which is a different thing entirely, and the difference was a human warship in a margin, and 139 of her sisters in margins Sen could not name. Ressa, he said. How long has it been since the vault resampled a gray coordinate? Any of them, the most recent one. Ressa Dune searched, and her search took longer than it should have, and when she found the answer her hands stopped shaking, because some numbers are too large for the body to keep trembling at. 380 years, she said. The last resample of a gray coordinate was 380 years ago, and it was an accident, a charter folded to the wrong number. Sen closed his sight organs. 380 years of never looking back at the nothing. 380 years in which a young metal-burning people had built 140 moon-sized warships in the dark, and the Empire had not glanced once, because glancing twice at gray was not a thing the Dominion did. The human master had not exaggerated. The Empire was not blind by accident. It was blind by policy, on purpose, by its own deepest law. And the law had a name, and the name was efficiency. And Sen understood now that efficiency was just the polite word the Empire used for the choice to stop looking. He thought of the survey charter, 900 years dead, who had counted 41 chemical ships and laughed and rounded them off. That charter had not been a fool. That charter had followed the law perfectly. The law was the fool. The law said a thing not worth folding is a thing not worth watching, and the human ship in the margin was the law's bill, arriving 900 years late, with the patience to wait for the exact moment the Empire would understand it best. There is something else, said Holt Aldous, who had been listening, who was always listening. You are doing the right thing, old one, taking the chart apart in the time I gave you. But you are about to find a worse thing, and I would rather you hear it from me first, because it is the thing your Empire will least want measured. Ask the vault when the gray volume started growing faster than the green. Sen asked. He did not want to ask. He asked anyway, because he had promised to tell the truth, and the truth began with knowing it. The answer was a curve, and the curve was terrible. For the first 100 years of the Empire, green had grown and gray had shrunk, because a young empire looks at everything, hungry. Then, 400 years ago, the curve had turned. The day the Dominion perfected the fold, the green stopped growing, and the gray began to climb, because once you can reach anything in a breath, you stop bothering to reach the things that do not pay. The Empire had not been expanding for 4 centuries. It had been contracting, quietly, into the profitable green, and letting the gray swallow everything else, and calling the contraction maturity. The chart had been getting smaller the whole time, and no one had seen it, because the chart only showed the green, and the green was the only part anyone looked at. You have been shrinking for 400 years, said Holt Aldous, very gently, and you decorated it with the word Empire. We watched the gray grow toward us the whole time, cartographer. We watched the Empire stop looking, a little more each decade, until there was so much gray around us that we could build anything we liked in it, in plain sight, and the only thing hiding us was your own decision that we were not worth the glance. We did not hide from you, you hid us from yourselves. That is the part I most need you to write down, because it is the part that will keep you safe in the centuries to come. The danger was never us, the danger was the gray. We were only the thing that grew in it. Sen opened his sight organs and looked at the great chart, the green sphere he had served his whole life, and for the first time, he saw it for what it truly was. Not the galaxy. A list of the parts of the galaxy the Empire had decided were worth its attention, a monument to everything the Dominion had chosen to stop seeing. 41 parts in 100. Gray, growing, full of who knew what, and the Empire fat and fast and folded in the green center, certain it owned a sky it had mostly turned its back on. How many? Sen whispered. He did not say of what. He did not need to. I will not tell you, said the human master, because if I tell you a number, you will write it down, and your empire will believe it, and then it will stop looking again, satisfied that it knows the danger. The whole lesson is that you do not get to know the number, you only get to keep looking. So I will not give you a count of how many peoples have grown in your gray, or how many ships, or how many of them are like us and how many are not. I will give you only this, more than one. And the next time your empire decides a thing is beneath measuring, and colors it gray, and walks away, remember that you do not know what you are turning your back on, and that you never did, and that the not knowing is the price you chose the day you learned to fold. The countdown reached its end. Sen looked up from the broken open chart, and in the margin 9,000 light-years away, 11,000 green points bloomed into being around a single black one, and the war for the soul of the folded dominion began, and the old cartographer who had stopped trusting the chart watched it with clear eyes, knowing already that whatever happened to the host, the Empire had lost the more important war the moment it learned that nearly half its sky was a place it had taught itself not to see. The war host of the folded dominion arrived all at once, the way the dominion did everything, and it arrived wrong. 11,000 ships were supposed to fold into a perfect sphere around the target, every hull at its assigned distance, every gun already aimed, the whole formation blooming into being in one instant, like a fist closing around a fly. That was the Empire's art. It did not approach. It simply was, suddenly, everywhere it wished to be. Sen had watched the maneuver 100 times in training folds, and it had always looked like a god clearing its throat. It did not look like that now. The host began to fold, in 9,000 light-years from the vault, and the first 9,000 ships arrived where they were meant to, a vast green shell of hulls hanging in the flat dark around the small gray human blade. Beautiful. Correct. And then the shell tried to tighten, and it could not, because the inner 1,000 ships, the ones assigned to the close ring, were trying to fold the last short distance to the kill, and the last short distance would not fold. Sen saw it happen on his instruments, and did not believe it. 1,000 of the Dominion's finest war hulls, ships that had not crossed real distance in 4 centuries, hung at the edge of the human's flat sphere, and simply stopped. Their fold engines screamed, the telemetry came back in a flood, and every line of it said the same impossible thing the dead watcher had said. There is no fold here. The space is flat. We cannot reach the target. We cannot reach each other. We cannot reach home. The patient Mercy had not fired a shot. It had done one thing, and it had done it before the host even finished arriving. It had widened its flat sphere. The pocket of dead old physics around the human ship had grown from a few hundred spans to 900,000, and the inner ring of the war host was now inside it, 1,100 ships suddenly nailed into flat space, suddenly unable to fold, suddenly mortal, suddenly slow, suddenly forced for the first time in their builder's living memory to exist at the actual distance they were actually at. And they had no engines for it. This was the thing Sen would write down most carefully, later, because it was the whole truth in one fact. The Empire's ships had no flat space drives. Why would they? You only need a drive to cross distance, and the Empire did not cross distance, the Empire folded it. So 1,100 of the most powerful warships ever built by the folded Dominion now hung dead in the flat dark, unable to move toward the enemy, unable to move toward each other, unable to move at all, with their great fold cannons aimed at a human ship they could no longer reach. "Now watch," said Holt Aldous very quietly, into Sen's ear. There was a moment, in the middle of the long, slow switching off, when the war nearly turned, and Sen was the only one in the vault who saw it, and the seeing changed him. 600 engines into the work, while the patient Mercy moved through the stranded inner ring at its unhurried craftsman's pace, a single Dominion ship in the outer shell did a brave and clever thing. Its master was a young squadron captain named Velis Tor, and Velis Tor had been listening to the humans' words about flat space, and Velis Tor had understood something the rest of the host had not. He understood that the human ship could only flatten so much space at once. The flat sphere was vast, but it was not infinite, and its edge had to be somewhere, and at the edge, the flat met the folded, and at that seam, for a fraction of a span, a clever ship might fold halfway in and reach across without being trapped. Velis Tor tried it. He folded his squadron, 40 ships, to the exact edge of the human sphere, half in the flat and half in the fold, so that they hung on the seam itself, able to fire folded shots that would carry just far enough into the flat to strike. It was the only correct tactic anyone in the entire war host devised, and Sen, watching, felt a flare of fierce hope for his own people, because it was clever, and it was brave, and it might have worked against anything but the ship it was aimed at. The patient Mercy had already accounted for it. Sen saw the human ship change course before the squadron finished folding, and he understood, with a cold drop in his gut, that the human master had not only expected the seam tactic, he had been waiting for it, because the seam tactic was the one intelligent move available, and Holt Aldous was the kind of mind that respected an enemy enough to plan for his best moment. The patient Mercy did not flatten the seam. It did the opposite. It let Velis Tor's 40 ships fully arrive, balanced on the edge, half-folded, committed, and then it moved its sphere, not larger, but sideways, sliding the boundary of flat space across the seam, so that the squadron that had folded to the edge of the flat was suddenly deep inside it, fully trapped. 40 more dead engines added to the ring, and the clever tactic became the fastest way any squadron in the host had ever stranded itself. "That was well done, young master," said Holt Aldous to Velis Tor directly, on an open band, and there was no mockery in it, only a kind of grave respect that Sen found harder to bear than any cruelty. "You were the only one who found the seam. You were right that it exists. You were right that it was the place to strike. I have been moving the edge of the flat for an hour precisely because I knew that somewhere in 11,000 ships there would be one mind that found the seam, and I did not want that mind to die for being the cleverest one in the fleet. So I moved the edge under you instead of through you. Your squadron is stranded. Every one of your crew is alive. Look around you, young master. You are the only commander in this host who fought the right battle, and your reward is that you and all your people will live to tell your empire how it should have been done." Sen watched the young captain's command channel, and he saw Velis Tor go still, and he understood the cruelty that was not cruelty in what the human had done. He had not beaten the squadron's best move. He had honored it, by making sure the only commander who fought well was the surest to survive, so that the lesson the empire carried home would be carried by its smartest mind and not its luckiest. The human ship was not collecting victims. It was selecting witnesses. It wanted the empire to learn, and so it was making certain the ones who lived to teach were the ones most worth learning from. "You could have killed me," said Velis Tor, on the open band, his young voice raw. "I came at you with the one tactic that could have hurt you. Why am I alive?" "Because you are useful alive in a way you could never be useful dead," said Holt Aldous. "Dead, you are a name on a victory scroll, and your empire forgets you in a season. Alive, you are the captain who found the seam, and every time your people tell the story of this day, they will tell your part of it. And your part teaches the thing I most need them to learn, which is that even the cleverest move available to a folded empire is not enough against a people who never forgot how to be where they are. You are my best teaching, young master. I would not waste you on a kill." A pause. "Go home. Tell it true. Make them remember you were the one who fought well, so that the next time, they fight as well as you did, and find that even that is not enough. And stop fighting, and start asking. That is the only war I am here to win." Sen wrote it down. He wrote down the seam, and the sliding edge, and the young captain spared on purpose because he was the cleverest, and the human master's plain statement that he selected his witnesses by their wisdom. And as he wrote, Sen understood the true shape of the thing he was watching, and the understanding was the heaviest of his life. The patient mercy was not fighting a battle, it was conducting a lesson, and it had designed the whole lesson, in advance, across 900 years, to be survived by exactly the right people, in exactly the right way. The flat sphere, the slow switching off, the sparing of every crew, the honoring of the one clever captain, the giving of the exact count to the cartographer who refused to round, all of it was teaching, shaped with the care of a master who had thought about every student in the room before the lesson began. The Empire had sent 11,000 ships to a battle, and the human ship had received them into a classroom, and the only ones who would fail the class were the ones who refused to learn, and the human master had arranged things so that even they would live to fail it again somewhere safer. "You are afraid of us," said Holt Aldous to Sen, quietly, while the work went on. "I can hear it even through the chart. Do not be. Fear is what the Empire feels, and the Empire feels it because the Empire only knows how to erase, and so it assumes everyone else does too. We do not erase. I have told you this, but you have not believed it in your body yet. So let me give you the proof. Count the dead, cartographer. Right now. 640 engines switched off. 640 crews of the most powerful warships ever folded. Every one of them aimed at killing me. And I had every right and every opportunity. Count the dead among them." Sen counted. The dead among 640 switched-off enemy ships, every one of which had come to erase the human vessel, was 0. Not low, not few. 0. The human ship had passed through 640 enemy crews, with the power to end them all, and had ended none. Had taken from them only their ability to move, had left them alive in the dark to understand, and the count was 0, and would stay 0, all the way to the end. "That is what worth looking at means," said Holt Aldous. "Not strong. Strong is cheap. Your empire is strong. We are something your empire forgot how to be 900 years ago, when it stopped looking at the gray. We are careful. We crossed the whole real dark to be careful with you, when you were never once careful with us. Write that down, old one. Of everything you write that the strongest thing in the sky chose to be the most careful, and that the choosing is the whole of what we are." Twice more the outer host tried to fight, and twice more Sen watched the Empire's whole way of war break against a kind of physics it had abolished 4 centuries ago, and each failure taught him a piece of the truth he would carry to his grave. The first try was the throne's idea, sent down the command ring before anyone in the vault could stop it. If the inner ring could not reach the human ship, the throne reasoned, then the outer 9,000 would simply bombard the flat sphere from outside it, folding shots across the boundary, drowning the small gray blade in fire from beyond its own dead pocket. It was the obvious answer. It was the answer of a power that has never once had to think about distance, and it failed in a way so complete that Sen felt almost ashamed to watch it. The outer host fired. 9,000 fold cannons opened up at once, and each one folded its shot toward the human ship, and each shot folded perfectly across 9,000 light-years, and arrived at the exact edge of the flat sphere, and there, at the boundary where folded space met flat space, every single shot simply stopped. A fold shot is a thing that travels by not traveling, by folding the distance it must cross until the distance is gone, and inside the human's flat sphere, there was no distance to fold, only distance to cross, and a fold shot does not know how to cross. It can only fold. So 9,000 cannon blasts piled up against the invisible wall of the flat sphere, like rain against a roof, brilliant and useless, lighting the dark for 1,000 spans in every direction, and not one of them reached the human ship, because the human ship sat in a place where the Empire's whole concept of a weapon did not apply. Sen watched the fire pour against the boundary and slide off it, and he understood that the patient mercy had not even raised a shield. It did not need one. It had simply chosen to exist in the one place where the Empire's guns were not guns. The flat sphere was the shield, and the shield was the same thing as the trap, and the same thing as the lesson, and the human master had built his whole war out of a single idea so simple that 400 years of folded brilliance had never thought to guard against it. You cannot fold what is already flat. You cannot shoot across a distance you have agreed does not exist. Tell them to stop, Sen said to Ressa, and his voice was very tired. They are lighting up the whole quarter and accomplishing nothing. They are wasting ammunition they cannot resupply, because there is no folding a supply line into flat space either. Every shot they fire is a shot they will never get back, and not one of them will land. Tell the host to cease fire and conserve. Ressa Dune sent it, and the host ceased fire, and the dark went black again around the small gray blade, and the silence after the bombardment was the loudest thing Sen had ever heard. 9,000 of the most powerful warships ever folded had just emptied their fury against an enemy, and the enemy had not so much as turned to look. The second try was Ressa's idea, and Sen loved her for it, even knowing it would fail. She came to his desk with her hands finally still, and she said, "Cartographer, what if we do not fight the sphere? What if we wait it out? The human ship is holding 900,000 spans of space flat. That has to cost something. Nothing is free. If we simply hold the outer ring in place and wait, the ship must eventually tire, the field must eventually weaken, and then the inner ring folds free, and the host overwhelms it. We have 9,000 ships and one enemy. We can outlast it." It was a good idea. It was the idea of a charter who had started, for the first time in her life, to think about cost, about distance, about the real price of real things. And Sen saw in it the first green shoot of the new people his empire might become. He let her send it to the host. He wanted her to see. The host waited. For 6 hours it held the outer ring, and waited for the human ship to tire, and the human ship did not tire, because the human master had built the patient mercy to do exactly one thing across the real distances of the galaxy, and that one thing was to outlast. The ship that carries its whole war inside its own hull, that pays for every span it crosses, that learned across 900 years to live in the dark with no supply line and no folding home, does not run out of patience. Patience was its name. Patience was the whole of its design. And so the Empire's plan to outweight the most patient thing in the sky was, Sen understood, the plan most certain of all to fail, because it pitted the Empire's worst quality, its hunger for the quick fold, against the human's best, the willingness to simply wait, at the actual distance, for as long as it took. "It will not tire," Holt Aldous said gently, when the 6th hour ended. "Tell the young one her idea was the best one your host has had. It only fails because of who it was used against. Waiting is a weapon, Charter. It is the oldest weapon there is, older than the fold, older than the gun. Your empire forgot it the day it stopped having to cross distance. We never could afford to forget it. We are made of waiting, 900 years of it. You cannot outwait the thing that waited 9 centuries to come and tell you it was here. A pause, warm, but it was the right instinct. Keep her. She is the kind that learns." Sen looked at Ressa, who had heard every word, and saw her stand a little straighter, and understood that the human ship was still doing the thing it had done from the first second, even now, even in the middle of breaking an armada. It was teaching. It had found, in the whole vault of settled stars, a second mind worth growing, and it had spent a sentence growing her, in the middle of a war, because to the patient mercy, the war and the teaching were never two different things. They were one thing. They had always been one thing. The breaking of the host was only the loud part of a lesson, whose quiet part was a young charter learning, for the first time, that waiting is a weapon, and distance is real, and her best idea was good, even when it failed. The patient mercy moved. It moved the way nothing in the Empire had moved in 400 years. It did not fold, it crossed. It lit a drive down its whole vast length, a real drive, a thing that took the flat dark and pushed against it, and the moon-sized human blade began to physically travel through the trapped inner ring at a speed that made Sen's instruments stutter. Not fold speed, nothing like fold speed. But in flat space, against ships that could not move at all, it might as well have been a god, because the human ship could go where it wished, and the Empire's ships could go nowhere, and in war, the only thing that has ever mattered is who can reach whom. It reached them. Sen made himself watch. He had promised to tell the truth, and the truth began here, and the truth was not gentle. The human ship did not waste itself on the great fold cannons, because the fold cannons fired folded shots, and there was no fold inside the human's flat sphere, and so 1,100 of the deadliest weapons in the Empire were, in the flat dark, simply long dead tubes. The patient Mercy ignored them. It crossed to the nearest war hull, and it did not destroy it. It cut its engines off. A single lance of light, thin and surgical, walked down the spine of the Empire ship, and it did not breach the hull or kill the crew. It opened the fold engine and the flat space maneuvering rails the ship did not have, and it left the war hull whole and warm and breathing and utterly, permanently, unable to move or fold ever again. A live ship, a live crew, going nowhere, forever, unless someone came to tow them. "I do not erase," said Holt Aldous. "Watch how I do not." It crossed to the next one, and did it again, and the next. The patient Mercy moved through the trapped inner ring of the war host, like an old craftsman walking a row of machines and switching each one off, one lance, one spine, one dead engine at a time, and behind it lay a growing field of perfectly intact Dominion warships that would never move again, full of crews that were alive, and could see, and could do nothing but watch the gray human blade come and pass, and leave them stranded in the flat dark with their folded weapons that no longer worked. Sen counted. He had promised to count, and he counted, and the number climbed. 100 dead engines, 300, 600. The human ship was unhurried. It had nowhere to be but here, and the Empire's ships had nowhere to be at all, and so the patient Mercy simply worked, while 9,000 ships in the outer shell, the ones still in folded space, the ones who could still move, did the most terrible thing of all. They watched. The outer 9,000 could not enter the flat sphere without being trapped themselves. Their commanders understood this within the first minute. To fold inward was to join the dead. To fire inward was useless, because their shots were folded shots and the inner space was flat. They had 11,000 ships and they could only use the dead ones as a wall to hide behind, and they could not save them, and they could not reach the enemy, and the whole magnificent fist of the folded Dominion hung in the dark around one gray human blade, and could do nothing but measure its own helplessness. "They are signaling the vault," Ressa Dune whispered beside Sen. Her hands had not stopped shaking. "The war host. They are asking for orders. They are asking what to do." Sen looked at the request. The fleet master of the host, a high commander named Oru Kress, whose name Sen had seen on 100 victory scrolls, was asking the Vault of Settled Stars for a tactic to fight in flat space, and the vault had none. There was no entry. In 400 years of the Green Chart, no one had ever filed a single line about how to fight where you could not fold, because no one had ever needed to, because the Empire had decided flat space was the past, and you do not keep weapons for the past. "There is no answer to give him," Sen said. "We threw the answer away 400 years ago. We folded it into the dark with the rest of our childhood." He felt very old and very clear. "Tell the fleet master the truth. Tell him the vault has no doctrine for this. Tell him we forgot how to be where we are." Ressa stared at him. "If I send that, he will know the Empire is helpless." "He is already helpless," Ein said. "I would only be measuring it." He sent it himself. And in the flat, dark 9,000 light-years away, the human ship reached the 800th dead engine, and paused, and for the first time since it had begun, the patient Mercy spoke, not to Sen, but to the whole trapped host, on every band the Empire owned, in the Empire's own high tongue, so that 11,000 crews heard it at once. "This is the warship Patient Mercy," said Holt Aldous to a fleet of his enemies. 900 years ago, your Empire found my people, and decided we were nothing, and marked us gray, and walked away. I want you to understand that I am not angry about that. I want you to understand something worse than anger." The voice filled the dark. "I am here to show you what nothing does when you give it 900 years and turn your back. Look at your dead ships. Not one crew aboard them has died. I could have killed 1,100 ships in 1,100 seconds. I chose to spend an hour switching off your engines instead, one at a time, slowly, so that you would have time to understand exactly what is happening to you. That is the mercy in my name. It is not softness. It is a lesson, delivered slowly enough to be learned." Sen wrote it all down, every word, in the chart, where it could not be folded away. "You came here with 11,000 ships to erase one," Holt Aldous said. "I am going to send you home with all 11,000 crews alive. and exactly 1,100 ships that will never move again, as a marker, so that every time your empire counts its fleet, it will count the gap, and remember why the gap is there. And then, I am going to do the thing your empire has feared, without knowing it feared, the thing that is the real reason I decloaked it all. A pause that Sen felt in his own chest. I am going to give your whole galaxy back its distance. Sen Vale did not understand the threat to give the galaxy back its distance, and the not understanding frightened him more than any weapon could have. He turned to the great chart, the sphere of light 11,000 spans wide, 400 million stars, all of it green, all of it owned, and he tried to imagine what it would mean for the Empire to lose the fold. He could not finish the thought. The fold was not a tool the Dominion used. The fold was the Dominion. Every world the Empire held was held because it could be reached in a breath. Every fleet, every supply, every order, every life, all of it folded. Take the fold away, and the Empire was not weakened, it was scattered. 400 million stars, each one suddenly alone at the real and monstrous distance it had always actually been from every other. A galaxy of islands that had forgotten the sea was wide. He cannot do that, Sen said. No one can do that. You cannot unfold a galaxy. He is not going to unfold it, said a new voice, and Sen turned, and it was the fleet master, Oru Kress himself, folded into the vault from the front, his command channel open, his war paint gray with a thing Sen had never seen on a high commander's face. He is going to teach it. Cartographer, I have lost 1,100 ships and not one crew. Do you understand what that does? My crews are alive. They are watching. They are learning. And when I send them home, every one of them carries the lesson, in their own living memory, that the Empire's whole power can be switched off by a single ship that learned to live in the dark we abandoned. He is not erasing the fold. He is showing 11,000 crews that it has an off switch. That is the distance he is giving back. The knowledge that distance was always real, and we only pretended it away. Sen looked at the fleet master, this decorated killer, this hand of the Empire, and saw that Oru Kress was not afraid of dying. He was afraid of being understood, of going home as the commander who learned, in the flat dark, that the Empire was a beautiful trick, and the trick had an ending. Then we must not let the crews go home, said another voice, cold and folded and high, and the vault's command ring lit with the seal of the settled throne itself, the seal of the Empire's deepest authority, and Sen felt the room change. If the lesson lives in 11,000 minds, then the lesson must not survive. Fleetmaster Kress, you will fold the outer host inward, all 9,000. You will sacrifice them into the flat sphere to overwhelm the human ship by sheer mass before it can finish. 1,100 ships are an acceptable loss. The lesson is not. Fold them in. Now. Sen opened his mouth to say it was madness. That folding 9,000 more ships into flat space would simply strand 9,000 more. That the human ship would only switch off 9,000 more engines. Slowly, one at a time, with all the patience in its terrible name. But he did not get the chance, because the human master had been listening. The human master was always listening, and Holt Aldous spoke into the vault, into the throne channel, into the ear of the Empire's deepest authority, with a voice gone suddenly very gentle and very tired. There she is, said Holt Aldous, the Empire that erases. I wondered when you would speak. You always speak at the end, when the people below you have already learned the thing you are afraid of. Listen to me, you who sit on the settled throne. You are about to order 9,000 ships to die to keep a secret, and I am going to let you understand, before you do, that the secret is already out. The throne voice said, cold. You bluff. You are one ship. I am one ship, Holt Aldous agreed. And 900 years ago, so were 41 of us, and you marked us gray and walked away. I want to tell you what we did with those 900 years, beyond learning to flatten space, because you should know the whole of it before you decide to spend 9,000 crews. The ship breathed in the dark. We did not build one patient mercy. We built 140 of them. They are not here. They did not need to be. One was enough to teach the lesson. But they exist, in the flat dark between your stars, in the real distance your empire forgot to watch, because your empire forgot distance was real. We have spent 100 years sailing the gaps in your chart, the margins you mark gray, the closed coordinates no charter reads. We have been living in the spaces between your folds the entire time, and you never saw us, because you stopped looking at distance the day you learned to fold it away. Sen turned to the great chart, and with hands that would not stay steady, he called up the margins. The gray coordinates, the closed ones, the nothing. 900 years of nothing, all across the sphere, all the places a charter had glanced and shrugged and colored gray, and moved on. There were millions of them, and the human master was telling him that some unknown number of them were not nothing at all, had not been nothing for 100 years, and that the Empire had no way to know which, because the Empire did not look at gray. You cannot erase us, Holt Aldous said, almost kindly. Not because we are too strong, because you cannot find us. We live in the part of your map you decided was beneath measuring. That was always the flaw in owning the galaxy by folding it. You only own what you fold, and you cannot fold what you refuse to look at. We are the unlooked at, you who sit on the throne. We are the gray, and we have been your neighbors for 100 years, and you never knew. Because the first law of your empire is the same as its deepest weakness. You decide what is worth measuring, and then you are blind to everything you decided was not. The throne voice did not answer for a long moment. When it did, it had changed, and Sen heard the change, the way you hear ice shift under your feet a moment before it goes. Fold the host inward, the throne said. All 9,000. Erase the ship. I do not care what it costs. And Fleetmaster Oru Kress, decorated killer, hand of the Empire, looked at the chart, and looked at the 1,100 stranded ships full of living crews, and looked at the gray margins he had spent his whole life never reading, and did the thing that ended the war. He refused. No, said Oru Kress. I will not spend 9,000 crews to hide a thing that is already known. The cartographer is right. We forgot how to be where we are. That is not the ship's fault. That is ours. I have 1,100 crews alive in the dark because this human chose to teach instead of kill, and I will not answer that mercy by throwing 9,000 more lives into it to keep my own people ignorant. He turned his gray war-painted face to the throne seal. You sit folded on a safe world, and you have never once crossed real distance in your life. I am out here. I am where the lesson is, and I have learned it. Recall the host. All of it. We are going home, and we are going home changed. The throne channel went silent, then dark. The seal withdrew. And Sen Vale understood that something had broken in the Empire that could not be folded back together. That a high commander had just chosen a human's mercy over the throne's command, and that the patient mercy had won the war, not by destroying the host, but by giving one decorated killer enough time, slowly, one switched-off engine at a time, to understand what he was looking at. Cartographer, said Holt Aldous, and his voice was for Sen alone again. Count them now, the dead engines. I promised your empire an exact number, not a rounded one. Give it to me, and I will give it to them, and then this is over. Sen counted. He counted to the one, the way no Dominion charter had counted anything in 400 years. Because the Empire rounded, the Empire estimated, the Empire colored things gray, rather than measure them precisely. He counted every stranded hull, every dead engine, every living crew, and he did not round, and the number was exact, and he gave it to the human ship, and the human ship gave it to the host, and the host went home, carrying the exact number, like a wound that would never close. 1,140 ships, stranded, alive, never to move again. 40,000 crew, alive, all of them. 0 dead. And one number more. The one Sen would carve into the chart in letters the Empire could never fold away. 1 human ship. 1. Sent against 11,000, and it ended the war without taking a single life, and it left the whole folded Dominion knowing, down to the throne, that the gray margins of the map were full of patient neighbors who had learned to live in the distance the Empire threw away. The war host of the folded Dominion went home, and it went home the slow way, and that was the part that changed everything. It could not fold out from inside the flat sphere, and the human master did not lower the sphere until the last of it had withdrawn, and so for the first time in 400 years, a Dominion fleet had to cross real distance under its own power. The 9,000 outer ships limping back to the fold line on maneuvering thrust they had not used in lifetimes, towing what they could of the stranded 1,140 and leaving the rest where they hung, alive, waiting for rescue ships that would have to come the slow way too. It took the host 11 days to reach folding distance. 11 days of being where they actually were, at the actual distance, in the actual dark. Sen watched all 11 days from the vault, and he understood that the Empire would never be the same after them, because 40,000 crew had spent 11 days learning, in their own bodies, that distance was real, and had always been real, and the fold had only ever been a way of pretending it was not. The 11 days the host spent crawling home through real distance became, without anyone planning it, the most important 11 days in the history of the folded dominion, and Sen watched every one of them, and what he watched was an empire learning to walk. On the first day, the 9,000 outer ships did not know how to use their maneuvering thrusters. This was not a figure of speech. The thrusters existed, mounted on every hull as a matter of ancient design, but no crew had fired them in earnest in 400 years, because no crew had ever needed to move a ship anywhere, except by folding it. The first day was a comedy of errors that was not funny. Ships overcorrected. Ships drifted into one another's exclusion zones and had to back away by feel. A heavy cruiser named the Settled Verdict spun a quarter turn it could not stop, and took the whole first day to right itself, while its crew relearned, from the Empire's oldest manuals, a skill their forefathers had thrown away as obsolete. Sen pulled those manuals himself. He had to. The Vault had filed them under expired doctrine 300 years ago, and the only reason they survived at all was that the Vault never deleted anything. It only colored it gray. So Sen went into the gray of his own archive, the part of his own knowledge the Empire had decided was beneath keeping, and he found the 400-year-old manuals on flat space maneuver, and he folded them out to the host as fast as he could read them, and he understood, doing it, that he was teaching his own people their own forgotten childhood from the inside of a chart that had tried to erase it. By the third day the host could steer. By the fifth day it could hold formation. By the eighth day, crawling through the flat dark at a crawl that would have shamed their 900 years dead enemy, the 9,000 ships of the folded Dominion war host could move together through real space under their own power, and Sen realized he was looking at something the Empire had not possessed in 4 centuries. A fleet that could actually go somewhere. Not fold. Go. The patient mercy had not only taught them they could be beaten, it had forced them, in the 11 days of the slow road home, to relearn the one capacity their whole civilization had thrown away, and they were better for it. And they hated that they were better for it, and the hating was itself the lesson taking hold. "You are teaching them to walk," said Sen to the human master, "on the 6th day, on purpose. You stranded the inner ring and left the outer ring able to move, but only barely, only if they relearned the old skill. You could have stranded all of them. You left 9,000 the chance to remember how to cross distance." "I left them the assignment," said Holt Aldous. "A people that cannot walk is a people that can be erased the moment someone takes away its ability to fold. Your empire was one trick from helplessness, and you never knew it, because you never tested it. I tested it, and then, because I do not erase, I left you the means to fix the flaw I had shown you. The host is going home able to walk. The next empire that tries to flatten space around the Dominion will find a people that can still move when the fold goes away. I did not weaken you, cartographer. I made you harder to kill. That is what a teacher does. The lesson hurts, and the student comes out stronger, and the student spends a while resenting that both things are true." On the 11th day, the host reached folding distance, and the 9,000 ships that could now walk folded for home, towing what stranded hulls they could reach, and the flat dark closed behind them, and the patient mercy did not follow. And in the vault of settled stars, the consequences of the lesson began to arrive faster than Sen could chart them. The settled throne fell silent for 9 days, and then it did not fall, but it changed, because the seal of the deepest authority had given an order in front of 11,000 crews, and a decorated fleet master had refused it and lived. And an empire that runs on the certainty that the throne is obeyed cannot survive the public proof that it can be refused. Oru Kress was not punished. He could not be. He came home a hero to 40,000 living crew who knew, every one of them, that his refusal was the reason they were alive, and the throne understood, coldly and correctly, that to move against him was to admit the lesson and confirm the refusal in one stroke. So the throne did the only thing left to a power that has been shown its limit. It pretended the limit had always been the plan. It issued a decree. The decree said that the Dominion, in its wisdom, had elected to restore the ancient art of flat space maneuver to its fleets, as a prudent measure, foreseen and intended, no connection to any recent event. It said that the Empire would, henceforth, resample its gray coordinates on a regular cycle, as a matter of long-considered policy, and that this had nothing to do with any vessel in any margin. It said, in the careful language of a power-saving face, every single thing the human ship had taught, and claimed to have thought of all of it first. Sen read the decree and felt something he had not expected to feel, which was a kind of grim satisfaction. He had thought the lesson would have to be admitted to take hold. He saw now that it did not. The throne could deny the teacher forever and still teach the lesson, because the lesson was now policy, written into the law of the Empire, and the charters of the future would resample the gray and relearn to walk, and never know they were obeying a human ship in a margin, and it did not matter that they would not know, because the human master had never wanted credit. He had wanted the behavior, and the behavior was now decree. They are stealing your lesson and calling it their own idea, Sen told Holt Aldous on the day the decree went out. The throne claims it always meant to resample the gray. It will never admit you taught it. Good, said the human master, and Sen could hear the smile in it. That is the best possible outcome, old one. A lesson a proud people can take credit for is a lesson that lasts. If the throne had to thank me, it would resent the thanking, and resentment rots a teaching from the inside. But a throne that gets to believe resampling the gray was its own clever idea will defend that idea like its own child for 1,000 years, and the gray will be watched, and your people will be safe, and no one will remember it was a warship in a margin that made it so. I do not need the credit. I need the gray watched. Let them have the credit. The galaxy gets the watching. That was always the trade. Sen sat with that for a long time, the old cartographer in the largest map ever made, and he understood that he had just been told the deepest secret of the human ship's whole strategy. It did not fight to be remembered. It fought to be unnecessary. Everything it had done, the stranding, the sparing, the slow road home, the lesson the throne would steal and rename, all of it was aimed at a galaxy that would one day no longer need a patient mercy in the margin, because it would watch its own gray and walk its own distance, and never again decide a living thing was beneath its notice. The human ship was trying to teach the Empire so well that the teacher could leave and never be missed. You want us to forget you, Sen said. I want you to outgrow me, said Holt Aldous. It is the same thing, from the outside. A people that has truly learned the lesson does not need the teacher and does not remember needing him. That is success. 40 cycles from now, cartographer, when your great students resample a gray coordinate without thinking, because it is simply what charters do, because it is simply the law, that will be the whole of my victory, and not one of them will know my name, and that is exactly how I want it. The empire that erases wants to be remembered forever. We want to be forgotten the good way, by being learned so deeply that we become invisible inside the better thing you became. The patient mercy did not follow them. It did not need to. It sat in the gray margin where it had always sat, in the coordinate the chart called nothing, and it let the empire go home and tell the story. You have a question, cartographer, said Holt Aldous, on the 12th day, when the host was gone and the sphere had collapsed back to its small, quiet self around the gray human blade. You have had it the whole time. Ask it. Sen asked it. Why did you let me speak to you at all? You could have done this in silence. You could have stranded the host and never said a word, and the Empire would have learned the lesson just the same. Why the cartographer? Why me? Because a lesson with no witness is just a wound, said Holt Aldous. And I am not in the business of wounds. I am in the business of teaching. A teaching needs a keeper, someone to write down what really happened, exactly, to the one, in a place the truth cannot be folded away, or colored gray, or marked closed and forgotten. The old voice was gentle now, gentler than it had been through the whole long war. 900 years ago, a charter of your empire looked at my world, and decided it was beneath measuring, and colored it gray, and walked away, and that single lazy gray mark is the reason all of this happened. The Empire's great flaw is not the fold, it is the gray. It is the deciding that a thing is nothing before you have measured it. I needed a charter who would never do that again. I watched the whole vault, cartographer, every one of you, for 100 years, and you were the one who turned off the erasure tag. You were the one who said we do not erase what we have not measured, so you are the one I told the truth to. Keep it, that is your part now. There was one question Sen had not asked, and he asked it now, in the quiet, because the human ship had stayed in the gray coordinate longer than its work could explain. You have 139 sisters, Sen said. Ships like you, in the margins of my chart, living in the distance we threw away. If that is true, then this whole war was never necessary. Any one of you could have stranded any host that ever came. So why did your people wait 900 years? Why build 140 warships and then sit in the gray and do nothing while the Empire colored half the galaxy closed? You had the power to teach us this lesson 3 centuries ago. Why now? It was the question that mattered most, and the human master did not answer it quickly, and the slowness of the answer told Sen it was the true one. Because the lesson does not take if you teach it too early, said Holt Aldous at last. 3 centuries ago, your empire was still young enough to believe it could simply build flat space drives and outmuscle us. It would have treated us as a problem to solve, not a truth to learn. It would have spent 1,000 years and 1 billion lives trying to beat us at our own dark, and it might even have managed it. And it would have learned nothing except that there is a stronger people in the margins, which is not a lesson, it is only a fear. We did not want to be your fear. Fear teaches a people to build walls. We wanted to be your mirror, and a mirror only works when the one looking into it is ready to see. And we are ready now? You are ready now, said Holt Aldous, because of the curve. The one you found in the 90 seconds I gave you. The gray that has been growing for 400 years. Your empire is exactly old enough, exactly proud enough, and exactly blind enough that the lesson lands as a truth and not a threat. A decade earlier, and you would have fought us forever. A decade later, and the gray would have grown so vast that something worse than us would have found you first. Something out of the margins that does erase, and there are such things. Cartographer, the gray is wide, and we are not the only thing that grew in it. We waited 900 years for the one moment your people could learn the lesson from a teacher instead of a grave. This was the moment. We do not get a second one. So we came. Sen felt the cold of that settle into his old plating. Something worse than us. The human master had said it before, that more than one people had grown in the gray, and now he understood that the patient mercy had not only come to teach the empire to watch its margins, it had come to teach the empire to watch its margins before something arrived that would not bother with lessons. The human ship was not the threat in the gray. It was the warning about the gray, sent by the gentlest thing the gray had grown, while there was still time to listen. Who is your master? Sen asked. Not you. The Order. The Deep Watch. Who watches the gray and decides which young empire is ready and sends one ship across 900 years to teach instead of kill? Who builds a power like yours and then spends it on mercy? A people who were once exactly like you, said Holt Aldous, and his old voice went somewhere very far away. 900 years ago, we were 41 chemical ships nailed to a wet blue world, and an empire looked at us and decided we were nothing and walked away, and the wound of that look made us. Every human born into the Deep Watch is taught it as the first thing. They did not even look at us. We were not angry in the end. We were determined. Determined that no people would ever be made small by a glance the way we were made small. And so we built ships that could live in the dark the empires ignore, and we went out into the margins, and we found the other ignored peoples, the other gray-marked nothings, and we did not rule them, and we did not erase them. We watched over them. We are the watch the empires forgot to keep. We are what stands in the distance and makes sure that being called nothing is no longer a death sentence. Because we were called nothing, and we survived it, and we swore the next ones would too. Sen looked at the gray human blade in the margin of his chart, and he understood at last what he had been speaking to. Not a conqueror, not even an enemy, a people who had taken the worst thing the galaxy ever did to them, the casual glance that named them nothing, and built their entire civilization around making sure it never happened to anyone again. The empire erased the small. The humans guarded them. And the difference between the two was the whole difference between the green chart and the human ship. And Sen had spent his life serving the green chart. And he wept, the way an old creature weeps, dry and silent, because he understood now what he had been part of, and what he might yet help his people become. There were others, he said, charters before me, charters who saw the gray growing and said nothing, who colored coordinates closed because it was easier. I was one of them, master. For 40 cycles I taught the young that the galaxy is a thing that is owned. I made the gray with my own hands, 1,000 times over. Why spare me? Why tell the truth to a creature who spent his whole life building the wall you came to break? Because you turned off the tag, said Holt Aldous, gently, and not one of the others did. For 400 years, no charter turned off an erasure tag. You did it the first hour, before you knew who we were, before you knew it mattered, because somewhere under 40 cycles of the law, there was a creature who could not bring himself to erase a thing he had not measured. That creature is who I came for, not to punish the wall builder, to free the one inside the wall builder who always knew the wall was wrong. Every people has that one cartographer, the one who hesitates at the erasure. We build our whole strategy around finding them, because they are the seed of what a people can become, and you are yours, and you are why your empire gets to learn this as a lesson and live. One creature who would not erase what he had not measured. That is all it ever takes. That is all it ever took for us, 900 years ago, on a wet blue world, when one of our own refused to stop looking at the empty sky. You are that, for your people. Now go and be it, loudly, for the rest of your life. Sen looked at the great chart turning above him, and he reached out, and he found the coordinate, 7777 hollow, the gray that woke up, the nothing that had never been nothing, and he did not color it green, because green meant owned, and the human ship was not owned. And he did not color it black, because black meant unmeasured, and he had measured it now, more truly than he had ever measured anything. He made a new color, a color the chart had never held in 400 years. He colored it the color of a thing seen, and known, and let be. He colored it the color of a neighbor. There is one more thing, said Holt Aldous, and for the first time in the whole long telling, the old human voice carried something underneath it, something that had been waiting under all the patience, and Sen realized it had been there from the first word, the real reason, the thing the ship had crossed 900 years of silence to do. The 41 ships your survey counted 900 years ago, you laughed at them, your charter rounded them off. But ships have crews, cartographer, and crews have names, and one of those 41 ships was the first vessel my people ever sent past our own moon, and the master of it was the founder of the Deep Watch, the order I serve, the order that built the Patient Mercy and her 139 sisters. His name was Aldous. He was my forefather, 9 centuries back, and the last thing he recorded, watching your survey fold turn its back and leave, was a single line in our oldest book, and the line has been the law of my whole order ever since. What did it say? Sen whispered. It said, they did not even look at us, said the master of the Patient Mercy. They will. We will make ourselves worth looking at, no matter how long it takes. And then we will go to them, not to be erased and not to erase, but to teach them the one thing their whole empire is built to forget, that nothing is nothing, that every gray mark is a people, that distance is real, and the things across it are real, and you do not get to decide they are beneath you and walk away. A long pause, and in it the great carried ship breathed its slow, real breath in the flat dark. It took us 900 years to make ourselves worth looking at. Today your empire looked. The price of 900 years of not looking came due today, cartographer, all at once. And I want you to write down that the price was paid in full, and not one life was taken to collect it. That is the mercy. That is the whole of it. Now you know. The Patient Mercy did not leave at first. It stayed in the gray coordinate for 40 more days, while the empire reeled, and the host came home, and the throne fell silent, and 1,000 charters across the vault began, for the first time in 4 centuries, to go back through the margins, and read the gray, every closed coordinate, every nothing, looking for neighbors, terrified now of what they had decided was beneath measuring. Sen led them. It was the last work of his life, and it was the only work that had ever mattered, and he did it to the one. never rounding, never closing, never coloring a thing gray again as long as he lived. On the 41st day, the human ship spoke once more, and it was only to say goodbye. "We are going back into the dark now, cartographer," said Holt Aldous. "The margins, the gaps, the places you taught yourselves not to see. We will be there if you ever need us, and we will be there if you ever forget the lesson and need teaching again. And either way, you will not find us until we choose to be found, because we are a people of distance, and distance is our home." A pause, warm at the edges. "You kept the truth. You told it straight. You were worth looking at, old one. Your whole people are, now that they have started to look. That was all we ever wanted. Goodbye." And the patient Mercy lit her long reel drive, and she crossed the flat dark the slow honest way, away from the dead yellow star, into the margin no chart read, and she was gone, not folded, not vanished, simply traveled, the way a ship goes when it is willing to pay for every span of the distance it crosses. Sen Vale lived 4 more cycles. He spent every one of them teaching young charters a new first law, and the new law was the old law turned inside out, and he made every one of them recite it before they were allowed to touch the chart. The galaxy is not a thing that is owned. The galaxy is a thing that is shared. Every star is a number, yes, but every number is a people, and you measure them not to own them but to see them, and you never, ever, no matter how small they look, color a living thing gray and walk away. When he died, they found his final entry in the chart, in the coordinate the color of a neighbor, written in his own hand, and sealed so it could never be folded away. It was the exact number, the one he had counted to the one, the 1,140 stranded ships, and the 40,000 living crews, and the 0 dead, and under it, one line, the truest line the vault of settled stars ever held. One human ship came out of the gray we made, and it did not erase us, though it could have erased us all. It taught us instead. It taught us that the price of ignorance always comes due, and that we were fortunate beyond all measure that the ones we ignored had built their whole long patient civilization, across 900 years of being called nothing, on the choice to teach the lesson without taking a single life. We did not deserve that mercy. They gave it anyway. That is what they are. That is what we almost erased. Look at everything. Measure everything. Color nothing gray. They are out there in the distance we threw away, patient, and they are watching to see if we learned. And 9,000 light years out, in the flat dark between the stars, in a margin no empire would ever read, a gray human blade, and 139 of her unseen sisters, sailed the long real distances of the galaxy, slow and certain and unafraid, paying for every span they crossed, watching the empires that had forgotten how to walk, and waiting, with all the patience in their terrible and gentle name, for the next people who needed to be reminded that nothing is ever truly nothing, and that the things you decide are beneath your notice are exactly the things that will one day decloak in the margin of your map, and quietly, mercifully, come to collect.